Hey guys, today we are doing notes for 1-3, graphing linear functions. This should be really just a recap of what you learned in Algebra 1 and even worked on in geometry. All we're doing is just graphing our straight lines, okay? So, let's talk about some of the formulas that we've used that you've seen before. The first one is, of course, slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form, we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. Now my slope is represented by m, my y-intercept is b. It's y equals mx plus b. So your slope's always being multiplied to your x, and your b, your intercept is whatever's being added on to the end there. Okay? Some other things that we need to know. How to find our slope. Now this triangle here, that just means change of. So our slope is just the change in y divided by the change in x. All right, pretty much kind of you can kind of think of it as like the angle that your graph is at. So let's take a look here at our first equation. And so we're going to try to find the y-intercept and the slope, so that way we can write our equation for our graph here. So first, my y-intercept, we have a point right there, okay? And so my y-intercept is going to be where it intercepts the y-axis, and so my y-intercept is going to be 0, 1. Another thing, your y-intercept is always going to be where x is 0. So there's my y-intercept, my first one. So I have my y-intercept, let's find our slope. Now we find our slope by counting how much we go up is on top of our fraction and how much we go over is on the bottom of our fraction. If it is a positive graph, as we read from left to right, my graph is going to go upwards. If it's a negative graph, as I read from left to right, I'm going to go downwards. So what kind of graph is this one? Is it positive or negative? Good, it is positive. Yeah. So as we count, we're going to count up 1, 2. So we're going to go up 2, and we're going to connect it to this point, and we're going to go over 1. So my slope is going to be 2 over 1, or 2. So when I go to write my equation is going to be y equals 2x plus my y-intercept, which is 1. So my equation is going to be y equals 2x plus 1. All right, before we move on to our first problems, let's first refresh ourselves on how to find the x-intercept and y-intercept of a graph. The x-intercept of a graph is whenever y is 0, whenever your y value is 0. And the opposite is true as well. To find my y-intercept, that's whenever x is 0. Okay? Or if you have it written where y equals mx plus b, it's whatever your b is on the end. So there's two ways to find your y-intercept. Okay, let's go scroll down here and let's take a look at number 1. So number 1, it's asking us to find the slope and intercepts of that equation and then graph. Okay, so I'm going to first put it into slope-intercept form so I can find 2 out of 3 of those very easily. So to get it in slope-intercept form, I need to get y by itself. So I'm going to move this negative 4x over to the other side. And to do that, I'm going to add 4x to both sides. So that's going to leave me with y equals 4x minus 1. And just like that, we can tell what my y-intercept is and what my slope is. My y-intercept is right there, right? So here's my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, negative 1. And my slope is what's being multiplied to my x. So my slope is going to be equal to 4. All right, now what about my x-intercept? Well, my x-intercept is whenever y is 0. So we kind of have to do some finagling here, right? We're going to take that same equation that we've been working with, y equals 4x minus 1. But instead of having a y there, I'm going to instead have a 0, and then we can solve for what my missing x is. So we're going to go 0 equals 4x minus 1. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And I'm going to get 1 equals 4x, divide both sides by 4. And so x equals 1/4. So my x-intercept is going to be at 1/4, 0. Okay? Now, did I have to find my x-intercept to be able to graph this? No, we're just getting some extra practice in. But let's go ahead and graph. We have my y-intercept, I have my slope, and so I'm going to go ahead and put my y-intercept on here. My y-intercept is at 0, -1, so there's my y-intercept. My slope is 4, so that means I'm going to go up 4 over 1, up 4 over 1, or down 4 to the left 1. So let's do that. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put a point. Well, that's not where the point is, but I'm just using that as a counting spot. I'm going to go up 4 over 1. There we go. And then I'm going to go up 4 over 1 again. And let's just go ahead and go down 4 over 1. You can see where my line is going to go. So let's go ahead and draw that line. It's going to go just like this. Of course, that's not perfectly straight, but it's the best we can do right now. All right. So there's my line. We found all the things we've asked for. And then now let's go ahead and talk real quick about domain and range. Domain and range you've heard about a little bit, but it's just the measure of x values and y values. So your domain is going to be all of the x values that it touches. Your range is going to be all the y values it touches. The great thing about linear equations, all linear equations, their domain and range are always going to be all real numbers. So you don't even have to think about it. I'm just going to show you real quick. So my domain here, all real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. My range, all real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. It's going to be that same thing for all that we do with linear equations. However, it could change. And so be anticipating that whenever we get into other units. But for this unit, it's always going to be all real numbers. Okay, let's take a look here over on the other side at number 2. So number 2, it is asking us to find the slope and intercepts and then graph again. So, same song, second dance. So we're going to go, we're once again going to try to solve for y. So let's go ahead, let's bring this x over. Let's minus x to both sides. And we're going to get 3/4 y equals negative x plus 6. Okay, now we have a fraction. How do we get rid of fractions? Remember, we did a lot of work on this in the last couple days. To get rid of a fraction, we are going to multiply by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply this side by 4, and I'm going to multiply all of this side by 4. Okay? So whenever I multiply this side by 4, it's going to cancel out that 4 that's in there. And so it's just going to be 3y left on this side. And when I multiply this side by 4, negative x times 4 is negative 4x. 4 times 6 is 24. All right, well, last step. Let's get this 3 gone. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And so we're going to have y equals negative 4x divided by 3 is negative 4/3 x. And 24 divided by 3 is going to be 8. So now here's kind of here's my equation, right? And in that equation, I can find my y-intercept and my slope. What is my y-intercept? It is 8. So we're going to have a y-intercept at 0, 8. And my slope, what's my slope going to be? It's going to be the number that's being multiplied to x, which is negative 4/3. So my slope is going to be m equals negative 4/3. Okay, with those two things, we can now graph, all right? I can graph my y-intercept here. My y-intercept is going to be at 0, 8. So it's going to be all the way up here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A little bit off the screen, but oh well. My slope is negative 4/3. Remember, so this is like my rise over my run. And since it's negative, as we go from left to right, it's going to be going down. So I'm going to go down 4 to the right 3. Down 4 to the right 3, and that's going to be where my graph is. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3. I'm We go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3. And now you can see what my graph is taking shape. We're going to have a line that kind of cuts through this top right corner of my graph. Okay, we did not talk about x-intercept. So let's go ahead and let's, once again, we don't need x-intercept to graph. I'm asking you to find it for some extra practice. To graph my x-intercept here, what am I going to do? I'm going to take my original equation and plug in 0 for y. So my original equation was x plus 3/4 y equals 6. But instead of having a y there, we're going to put a 0 there. So we're going to go 3/4 times 0 equals 6. Well, anything times 0 is 0, even a fraction. So 3/4 times 0 is 0, so my x equals 6. So my x-intercept is going to be 6, 0. Okay, then my domain and my range. My domain is going to, of course, just like always, going to be all real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. Because, look at this, it goes all the way to the left, all the way to the right. It covers all the values of x. So that's my domain. My range. This line is going to keep going all the way up. It's going to keep going all the way down. So my range is all real numbers. That's the fancy sign for saying all numbers are included. All real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay? All right. So there's first little bit. Let's go ahead and turn that page. We're going to go through this pretty quickly, okay? So, find the slopes, intercepts, then graph. We're going to do both of these real quick. This first one, y equals 2. You'll notice I don't have an x in this one. I just have y equals 2. Well, y equals 2, it equals 2 all the way over here. This is a straight line. So, my slope is 0. It is flat. It is non-existent. Whenever you just have a y equals number, it's just a flat line at whatever that value is. And on all of these points, y equals 2. So my y-intercept is also going to be 0, 2. And my x-intercept, there is no x-intercept. So I'm not going to have an x-intercept. We're no x-intercepts on this one. Because it's just going to be a straight line, you can kind of think about it being parallel to that x-axis. Number 4 is kind of the same thing. I don't have a y, I just have an x. Let me show you what this slope looks like, okay? All right, so 8 minus 3x equals 20. Let's solve for x. So I'm first going to subtract 8 to both sides. That's going to leave me with negative 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by 3, negative 3. So x is going to equal negative 4. So in other words, we're going to have a straight up and down line at x equals negative 4. Now this straight up and down line isn't going to, it doesn't have a slope. It doesn't have a slope at all. It's just straight up and down. In fact, since it's stacked on top of itself like that, its slope is actually going to be undefined. So, in short, if you don't have a y variable, your graph is going to look up and down at the point where it's equal to, and your slope is undefined. If you don't have an x, it's going to be straight horizontal, and your slope is going to be 0. I know it's a little tricky. If you're in class, there are some posters up on the wall to help you with that. Okay, now my x-intercept. My x-intercept on this one is, of course, going to be negative 4. Okay? And my y-intercept, I don't have one. It's not going to intercept that y-axis at all. Okay? All right. Taking a look here at number 5. Number 5, we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form for the following graph. Got to go through this quick, running out of time. So let's write that equation. First, let's find my slope and my y-intercept. My y-intercept is going to be there, where it intercepts the y-axis at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, negative 5. My slope, let's find another point here. Here's another point. My slope, we can just count the rise and the run between those 2 points. So I'm going to count up. 1, 2, 3 over 1. So my slope is going to be 3 over 1 or just 3. Up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. And last but not least, my equation is going to be y equals my slope, which is 3 times x, plus my y-intercept, which is a minus 5. So there's my equation. Looking here at number 6. Let's write the equation for this one. We're going to find my slope, my y-intercept, my y-intercept. Hey, look, it is right here at positive 3. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, 3. My slope, let's find another point. There's another point. We're going to go down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope is going to be down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it's going to be 1/4. But wait, is this slope positive or negative? You're right, it's negative, so it's going to be negative 1/4. Okay, because as we move from left to right, it's going down. So my equation is going to be y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3. All right, our last 2 questions, number 7, number 8. Number 7, it says find the slope of the linear function with these points, negative 3, 5, and negative 3, negative 1. So, if you remember, our formula for slope is slope equals the change in y over the change in x. In other words, y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So here's my y's, here's my x's, so I can just write this out. I can write my y1, which is 5, minus my y2, which is negative 1, over negative 3. Let me try that again. We're going to go 5 minus a negative 1 over negative 3 minus my x2, which is 3. All right, so then let's just simplify this. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. 5 minus a negative 1 is positive 6, because that's going to be adding 1. 6 divided by negative 6 is negative 1. So what's my slope? It's negative 1. Last one, number 8. Find the slope of this linear function with these points. We're going to use this same formula. So I'm going to go my slope is equal to y1, which is 1, minus y2, which is 5, over 0, which is x1, minus my x2, which is 6. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Negative 4 over negative 6, the negatives when you divide can cancel out. So 4 over 6 is going to simplify to a positive 2/3. All right, so just to recap, we've learned how to find slope. We've learned how to find slope and y-intercepts from a graph and write the equation, and we've learned how to graph from the equation. Please let me know if you have any questions on your homework assignment. All right, I'm always here to help you. Make sure you're paying close attention to what's going on in Canvas, because that's going to be our main resource. All right, guys, hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you, guys.